Good morning, grain traders. Welcome to today's Grain Blast with myself, Ryan, and the goddess of grain, Angie. As usual, Angie will be providing us a rapid roundup of the latest pricing flows and market moving news in grain markets. But before we get underway, the usual boring parts. As usual, and regular listeners will know this already, this is recorded live and there is no editing that takes part. So apologies for the trigger words, the expletives, and the random rambles, but take us as you find us. Hopefully we add some value to your day and put a smile on your face, not necessarily in that order. Nothing discussed on the podcast is trading or investment advice, and nothing is an endorsement unless we make it extremely clear that it is. But Angie, how are you, my love?
I'm super. I'm really sad right now because I broke the speakers on my computer.
No.
And so, yeah, I'm relying on, have you ever had to rely on the sound from your monitor?
Not since I was about 16.
Right? I am slumming it today up in here. I tell you what. And so it feels really odd. I'm all out of sorts. But other than that, I'm good. It's Wednesday. Then we have a few
Already?
things to talk about today. I was like putting together notes ahead of this. I'm like, what am I going to talk about? Because I feel like all I do is repeat the same old narratives. But I guess that's what you do when you talk about
Yep.
what's going on in trade and you trading the same stuff, kind of day in and day out here. And so biggest things obviously is we had the Russian peace talks or the developments that followed. I'm trying to remember the exact timing of yesterday. Were we in the call when Putin started tossing the threats around? I think we were. Or it was right after we had hung up.
I think they might have. I think he might have started tossing them around.
Right as we were
As
wrapping
we
up,
were,
I think
yeah.
was.
So we didn't mention it, but yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking back to see when the timestamps are from the tweets. And yeah, it basically was right after we wrapped up, where you saw Putin say, if Europe wants to fight war, we are ready now. You heard some fiery conversations about blocking Ukraine from the Black Sea. Sorry, I have the hiccups all of a sudden. So that's professional and awesome. It'll go away in about 3 seconds, I tell you what. But yeah, you saw it just sort of some threats. And what was most interesting to me anyway is I was like, is this kind of before or after? Because we had talked about the Witkoff Kushner
Yeah.
Putin meeting and how it was scheduled for that day. Well, it got pushed back 3 hours, right? Specifically for Putin to go to some sort of dinner and basically say these things. And then they had their meeting. And based on reports right now, because no one has seen the amended Ukraine, kind of follow up, at least at this point, or at least not that I've seen,
No.
but it sounds as though the Ukraine, like the initial reports where the Ukraine amendments had been rejected by Russia. But then this morning you saw kind of the Kremlin say certain things are okay, other things not okay. And I think we all know what the other things that are not
Yeah.
okay, are. And they're the same things that have been not okay for the last 3.5 years.
All right. Hate to break it to you, but these haven't changed.
Right, yeah, like it's the out with the old demands in with the new, they're the same as the old. I don't know, like you fool me once, shame on me sort of thing here. But so you had this sort of threat. Now, the folks that I work with or talk to that are smart about all things Ukraine movement, sea movement, and all of that. Like they're paying attention to the Black Sea grain corridor and its success and the movement of grain that had happened because of it and some of these other things. And they're basically saying, hey, Russia doesn't really have the ability to do this from the Black Sea. Like their naval, their seaborne, abilities are very, very limited. It's not going to be, targeted from the Black Sea. Like they're not going to use submarines or naval ships or whatever. It's going to be very difficult for them to do that. But you could see them start to use drones, which to me, like drones and drone warfare is like so dystopian. It gives me hives when I think about it, but it is what it is. And it's one of those things that you could see more of that. And potentially, in my opinion, obviously, like if they can't really target from the sea, I think they just start to hit the infrastructure at the sea.
Yeah.
And so then, just basically what we've been talking about here for a minute, like, are we really going to see this sort of escalation that is well beyond what we have seen for the bulk of the invasion, the war, whatever, or no? Is this just saber rattling? And you are seeing today, the market, the corn market at the very least is giving back what it had gained yesterday. We were up 5 at the end of the day. We're currently down 5.5 on the March board. Right back. If you liked, yesterday's range, we're going to do it again from the looks of it. And wheat's kind of off a little bit. The wheat has some other things that aren't strictly Black Sea related that we're watching. There are some rumors that Argentina is starting to wash out of milling quality export contracts. No one's seen confirmation on it yet, but I think
When you say wash out of, do you mean just like kind of drop out or?
yeah,
Like,
they have to pay a penalty. You're going to pay something. You're going to whatever. It's always best if you can't meet the specs of a contract to be the first one to be like,
right.
yo, I have crap quality over here and you don't want it. And so there are some rumors and we have, I think, talked about it a little bit maybe here. I know I say things a lot throughout the day and sometimes I'm not 100% sure where they land.
Ditto.
What'd you say?
I
Sorry.
said ditto. I find myself sometimes I'm like, hang on, did I say this to you or did I talk
Right.
about this
That's
over
it.
dinner? I knew I said
Might
it
have just been
somewhere.
in my head for all I know. But yeah, a lot of wheat. Argentina has a super mega record wheat crop, like 7 million metric ton, 250 million bushels bigger than the previous record or bigger than last year's crop, at least. I don't think it's quite that much bigger than the previous record, but it's still significantly larger than the previous record. And that's driven by a lot of rain. And what people really don't realize about wheat more than anything is it really doesn't like a lot of rain. It really doesn't need a lot of rain. Like it'll take a lot of rain when it's grass, when it's the grass. It can do whatever it wants to do then because it's like a cockroach. But once it puts a head on, once you see, the weed actually starting to produce the grain itself, it really just needs teaspoons of rain, just enough to fill, the head and do what it needs to do to finish. But if you start to get too much rain, like, yeah, you're going to add you're going to finish really good. You're going to add a supply to that crop and this, that, and the other thing. But it's a very fine line that it sounds like Argentina unfortunately toppled over, which
Right.
is a little bit too much. Like just enough is okay, but a little bit too much starts to damage quality. And so right now you're seeing, conversation where their feed wheat, excuse me, supply is going to be great, which can weigh heavily upon corn. Just so we're clear, that's what you can, if you have cheap enough feed wheat, you can replace corn with relative ease. And right now that's what you're seeing is feed wheat's dropping below $200 a ton, and corn sitting around 230-ish or whatever. It is getting to where it is going to potentially replace some feed demand, or it could, but it is something that's going to potentially support wheat here because I just was saying the other day, it was here. I was saying it because now it just came back to me. I'm like, Celine Dion over here. But it was the other day, that we were talking about where, a big crop it's just one of those things where we're relying upon Russia and Argentina for grain movement, for wheat movement. And I said that's a dangerous proposition, right? Like both of them right now logistically are usually somewhat problematic, but now you're seeing where quality out of Argentina is not going to be as good as what was thought. And so you kind of have a little bit less than what folks were thinking, potentially moving at least of milling quality moving into the pipeline. So
Right.
that'll be something to watch. You're seeing sort of similar things, not quality wise out of Australia, but you're seeing a little bit of a slower start.
Did you just use an Australian accent when you said Australia then?
Australia? I don't know. I heard myself say it and I'm like,
Yeah.
why did you say it like that? But sometimes I don't know what happens when my mouth opens and words come out. It just things happen. But you are seeing similar things in Australia where you put another shrimp on the bobby. You are not quite seeing the prices under pressure as they should be with
Right.
harvest. Like just another story out there where it's like, okay, well, we have this super mega awesome harvest and like we should see big time pressure, but we're really not seeing it. And blast those farmers and their slow selling. And so we'll see how this all develops. But the Southern Hemisphere crop and the big crop that was supposed to be coming off and into the world pipeline has been one of the things that's been weighing heavily upon wheat. Also, the thoughts that Russia is going to ship a lot of wheat into the world market here soon has been weighing upon wheat. And so if we do see any sort of further hiccups logistically, you're going to see a continuation of strong nearby demand for US wheat, which is one of the things I'm watching too. Gulf wheat basis is kind of staying very stout for historical means and what we've seen. We watched it improve about 40 cents here over the last month or so. And then it's just basically kind of maintained that level. I'd have to go back and see where we were a year ago. But when I looked, a couple weeks ago or so, we were 30, 40 cents higher than last year's levels for Gulf wheat, which is something that is surprising when we're supposed to have, so much supply and no demand. But that's what we got. So we'll see kind of how that works. I'm watching European values also kind of continue to firm basis wise. And we're seeing a lot of cash inverses in wheat. And so a cash inverse is supposed to be a bullish signal. So I
Okay.
have seen some analysts lately twist themselves into a pretzel to say it's because folks are bearish deferred demand, you guys. So just in case you wanted to go punch yourself in the face, you can with that. Otherwise, and it's so sad because it's someone I absolutely adore. So I feel bad kind of, but I'm just like, when we've completely, like removed the gravity of
Yeah,
cash
yeah,
out of
yeah.
the thing just so we can embrace a bearish narrative, then okay, it's fun. Lastly, what we're looking at, just kind of watching this, farmer bridge payments. Yesterday, Secretary Rollins said that they'll be announcing bridge payments next week. So if you're keeping score at home, 2 weeks ago, within the next 2 weeks, we were going to have a farmer, bailout announcement coming. Now we're on week 3. I'm not going to hold my breath that we get anything next week, but they did say it's going to be bridge payments, which makes me want to gag myself with the spoon, simply
This
because.
kind of makes me think that that you then got to pay them back.
So that's why, yeah, like a bridge payment. Like what is this? If
That
A,
yeah,
B, all it's going to do is flow directly from the farmer into the hands of the input provider, into the hands of the folks that have been jacking up prices here, and not really addressing the elephant in the room that the farmer is not making anything, and so this whole concept of, oh, it's just, kind of, it's a money laundering scheme. At this point, it's a money laundering scheme, let's just be honest. And a lot of folks, and then they're not wrong. Like if we're going to have a cheap food policy, you're going to have to get used to having some level of subsidy, simply because you can't have both. You can't have your input providers and your big major elevator companies beholden to
yeah.
shareholders either, and have this work out well for the producer in the end, when it comes down to it. And that's not me trying to be on a soapbox, but it's just, if you're listening to this and you're on the outside of agriculture and you're like, oh, those lucky farmers getting these, they're not going to, it, if we're lucky, it'll get recirculated back into the local economy if it's a place that has a local co-op that maybe still be farmer owned and some of these other things. But for the most part, this is just stuff that it's just going to end up, like I said, in the hands of, the folks that are beholden to shareholders and others. And it is what it is. But it's just, we had an opportunity, this administration had an opportunity to really address, a lot of things that needed to be fixed for farmers. Look at guaranteeing loans that are outside of just the FSA, because the FSA is a dumpster fire currently. There's just a lot of other things that they could be doing that would cost them a lot less and would help the actual farmer and the actual ag economy. And so I was a little frustrated, but I guess we'll see what they have to put out next week. I shouldn't complain too loudly before I know what is in the deal, I guess. But
That
bridge
won't stop
payments,
you. That won't stop you.
they definitely won't. I'll just complain louder once they come out. But yeah, that's what it just makes me raise my eyebrow. Otherwise, we're just going to watch cash grain moves going into December. Weather influences basis. If you're somewhere, if you're a farmer, listen to this, and your weather is just dotted with snowstorms and things like that, don't be surprised if in another 10 days you don't see some pretty stout and firm basis opportunities. And don't be afraid to take them if you got them. Yesterday we saw basis pop 20 cents here locally. It gave a lot of my growers an opportunity to sell some 450 corn, and we did it. And so, just kind of keep an eye on some of these opportunities that pop up here and there if you're in an area that's seeing them. And yeah, otherwise, Brazil weather looks a little bit better as we work our way into the weekend. There's some rain in the spots that need it. And, just we'll continue to watch that. There's been some heat. There's been some concerns. There's been some talk of replanting. There's been some reducing of crop size. It's still bigger than a year ago. And December is a really, really key month. And so we'll be just kind of watching to see how that looks and what that means. But yeah, lastly, we did hear of some, I think I've said lastly like 7 times, so I apologize. Like, and another thing.
And one other thing.
We did see China come in last night and make some purchases of beans. I know one of the things that's been weighing heavily upon this market as well is the lack of flash sales. The flash sales system is flawed, you guys. Like, we need to understand this. Like, don't rely on flash sales, they're going to break your heart because it's flawed. They don't have to report as quickly as you think you do. And when you're dealing with Kofco, and I've said this before, Kofco has a U.S. arm, and so Kofco doesn't have to announce it as an export sale until it's loaded on the boat or it's the futures are swapped or whatever. It can unload in China. And that's when it's announced as an export sale. So don't get your panties wadded because we're not seeing flash sales. The biggest thing's going to be, how the weekly export sales numbers come out. Unfortunately, we're still lagging like 6 weeks on those. So good luck, Godspeed, have fun with that. But yeah, we'll just continue to hear what's going on in cash. Watch cash more than anything, basis spreads, yada, yada. And that'll do it, I think, for your Wednesday. Hopefully now my tea is cooler. When I tried to drink it earlier, it burnt my tongue.
Oh, nothing worse than that, or the roof of your mouth, because then it spoils the rest of your day. No one likes that.
Exactly. I feel the most English I've ever felt right now. It's like blasted tea.
God
I don't
damn
know
it.
if that bloody tea. There we go.
Bloody tea, bits and bobs. Angie, thank you so much as always. Yeah, we got a trip around the world. We got Aussie Angie, we got British Angie, and we got American Angie. Tune in tomorrow for Chinese Angie. Don't do the eyes.
We
Don't
won't
do the
do that
eyes.
one, I promise.
Don't do the eyes. Right, on that note, I'm going to wish everyone a very happy day. Keep yourself safe, stay out of trouble, and see you tomorrow. Much love.
Have a good one, guys.
Oh, God.